Part 1. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Jeong. Chapter 1. 2016. Longguo, Beijing. A small bedroom in an old building. The afterglow of the setting sun shines through the curtains, casting mottled light and shadows. The whole room is filled with a peaceful and warm atmosphere. Suddenly, a tall figure jumped up from the bed like a leopard. He was about 21 or 22 years old, tall, straight, and handsome. With a height of 185, he is like a mountain. His figure is comparable to that of a model, with smooth lines and perfect proportions. His appearance is even more handsome, like a masterpiece of Nouveau. But at this time, his deep eyes flashed with anger and murderous intent. For a long while, Lin Xian was stunned by the bed, slowly raised his right hand and stroked his chest. There was no blood, no scars, and even the bullet holes disappeared. He pondered for a moment in the confusion of doubting life. He looked at the familiar environment and the more familiar single bed. Finally, he looked at a calendar on the wall and the year, month, and day on it. 2016, reborn. Lin Xian completely doubted his life. Reborn from 2024 to 2016. A moment ago, he died gloriously. In the process of arresting the vicious kidnappers, he was shot 4 times. Before he died, Lin Xian watched the kidnappers walk away and closed his eyes unwillingly. As a result, when he opened his eyes again, he was not only resurrected with full blood, but also returned to 2016. He raised his hands, his fingers were slender and powerful, full of strength and solidity. But they were extremely white, compared to his hands covered with gun calluses 8 years later. Like a work of art. Lin Xian's body trembled uncontrollably. It was also the first time he experienced the surprise and teasing of this humming thing called fate. It always catches people off guard, and makes ordinary people see what the world is like. Suddenly, the door was quickly pushed open, and a middle-aged woman walked into the room. Seeing his son standing by the bed in a daze in a pair of big shorts, Lu Yunqing was furious and scolded, "You don't sleep at night and don't get up in the morning. What time is it? Can you be a little more reasonable?" Seeing his mother who has become younger, Lin Xian's eyes were moist. He took a step to Lu Yunqing and hugged his mother in his arms. "Mom, I love you. Isn't it disgusting? Can you stop learning from your dad, who is always so slick?" Lu Yunqing, who was hugged by her son, was angry and amused. "You two are both bad guys. One cheats for money and the other cheats for sex. Have you run out of pocket money again?" The son's "I love you" was so awkward that she had goosebumps all over her body, but her heart was warm. He. Lin Xian let go of his mother and smiled foolishly, "Mom, make me a delicious meal tonight." He knew his mother's personality very well. She looked small and delicate, but she was very aggressive, but she had a sharp tongue and a soft heart. If anyone dared to bully her son, his mother would dig up their ancestors' graves. She was very protective of her son. "You're so greedy." Lu Yunqing glared at his son and scolded him with a smile, "Buy whatever you want to eat." "Okay." Lin Xian laughed happily, put on his clothes and walked out of the house. When he left the community, the smile on his handsome face had disappeared. Lin Xian took out his old mobile phone and looked at the date on it. March 27, 2016. 6 days later, it was the day he reported to the Criminal Investigation Brigade. The memories that had been sealed in his mind surged like a torrent. Internship, regularization, superintendent. It was this year. The public security organs abolished the rank of police officer. After becoming a regular employee from an apprentice, he can directly become a superintendent. His 8 years of police experience are still vivid in his mind, like a dream. But God has given him another chance. Rebirth. Do I have to go down the old path? Lin Xian muttered to himself. You have to know that he now has the memory of the future. If he doesn't become a policeman, relying on the memory of his past life, he can easily become a dog-rich man who likes to spend money. From then on, he lives a boring life of a rich man. But can I really let it go? In my mind, I can't help but recall the scene of swearing in front of the police flag. Lin Xian's face is full of the vigor when he walked out of the police academy in his previous life. Slowly raised his hand, facing the distant sky, facing the sunset. He saluted. After buying vegetables, he returned home. He saw his father who was off work. Dad is still the same as in his memory, without much change. It is said that men don't look old, and this is indeed true. He has a refined temperament, handsome features, and the vicissitudes of life. He has a scholarly temperament, which is very suitable for the identity of a university professor. When he saw his father again, a warm hug was inevitable. But the affection of his son made Lin Dong, the father, confused. The couple felt that their son was strange today. As for what was strange, they couldn't tell. They liked their son very much. He was energetic and had light in his eyes. After dinner, they returned to the bedroom. Lin Xian, who was sitting on the chair, gradually lost the sunshine on his face and was replaced by coldness. He put his hand on his chest again, recalling the heart-wrenching pain of being hit by a bullet. He never remembered grudges, and if he had a grudge, he would beat the dog brains of his enemies on the spot. It's a pity that there was no chance in the previous life. This hatred must be avenged in this life. How to avenge? In the previous life, Lin Xian assisted in the investigation of a serial kidnapping case. The kidnappers committed 3 crimes in 8 years. The methods of the cases were the same, the targets were clear, and the means were cruel. Each kidnapping case was so earth-shattering. The reason for this is that the targets chosen by the kidnappers every time they committed crimes were all wealthy people. The amount of ransom extorted was in billions. The 3 kidnapping cases were 1 billion, 3 billion, and 5 billion respectively. 3 serial kidnappings, 3 major cases. This kind of case has been unique since the founding of the People's Republic of China. The case started when Lin Xian was a policeman in his previous life and was traced to the day of his sacrifice. He was only 1 step away from catching the leader of the kidnappers. Unfortunately, he didn't take the step and got a lunchbox. It's not that Lin Xian is incompetent, but the kidnappers' firepower is too strong, and they have bulletproof vests, and there is no time to call for support. He killed 3 of the 6 kidnappers himself, and his colleague killed 2. In the process of capturing the kidnapper leader, he and his colleague were shot by a submachine gun. 2 versus 6, 2 police pistols vs pistols, grenades, and submachine guns. They were able to kill 5 more kidnappers. If they hadn't sacrificed themselves, their record would have been enough to brag about for the rest of their lives. What should we do next? Lin Xian narrowed his eyes and habitually reached for his pocket to find a cigarette. Then he remembered that before he became a policeman in his previous life, he didn't know how to smoke. Then, his brain started working like an overclocked CPU. Recalling the files of the earth-shaking serial kidnapping case in his previous life. Recalling all the content and details of the case again. Until late at night, Lin Xian came to his senses. 4 words floated in his mind. Seize the opportunity. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 2. There were 3 serial kidnapping cases in 8 years. It seems that the first incident happened on Lin Xian's 3rd day after joining the police. In other words, the kidnappers have already planned their kidnapping target. The so-called seizing the opportunity is to arrange things around the target in advance. Finally, arrest. Are you going to call the police? Lin Xian was amused by this idea. Let's not mention that he will soon become a trainee police officer. Is it useful to just say that you call the police? Will others believe what you say? Even if you believe it, can you explain how you knew someone was going to kidnap? There is another important point. Lin Xian had never seen the appearance of the 6 kidnappers. Never mind that he and his colleagues killed 5 kidnappers. But the kidnappers were all wearing masks at the time, and there was no chance to lift their masks. I have no idea what the kidnapper looks like. If you act rashly, you may alert the enemy. Don't think that you are the only smart person in this world. He was able to commit 3 crimes in a row, and all 3 kidnapping cases were successful, with a total ransom of 8 billion. Would such a kidnapper have no brains? Maybe there is an unusual person around the kidnapped target, and the kidnapper will notice it? If the kidnappers discover something unusual, will they continue to commit crimes? We are all human beings, and anything you can think of, others can think of too. 6 days, no, 5 days. Lin Xian's eyes were bright. I had a bold idea in my mind. First, he couldn't call the police in advance. Because it's hard to explain, and he can't explain how he discovered the kidnapper. Secondly, the kidnapper must be found within 5 days. Because he has to report to the police in 5 days. Finally, one needs to go to the kidnapping victim. Because the suspect can only be detected when he is with the victim. Only when the suspect is identified can he have an excuse to call the police without being suspected. Of course, even if it is impossible to confirm who the kidnappers are, then Lin Xian will also call the police in advance and will not make fun of the victim's life. But how to get to the victim? And this method can't attract the attention of the kidnappers. It also allows the victim to successfully accept him and stay with him. He is still not flashy enough. Lin Xian has a headache. It might be okay to let him investigate the case. But letting him play the role of a spy is not his strength. As he thought about it, Lin Xian suddenly felt happy. Got it? Early morning. It was as if the world had just awakened from a deep sleep. The sun shines on the earth. Cover everything with a golden glow. It seems to be the gentlest call of nature. Second ring. In an alley. Lin Xian, with a sunny smile on his face, strolled in the alley. Then he stood in front of a red-painted door. Take a look around. He found a hidden camera installed on the doorframe. Rich people are all big dogs. As a Beijing native, Lin Xian knew very well how much the 3-in-1 courtyard in front of him was worth. It is precisely because the other party is rich that he becomes the target of the kidnappers. Mu Qingjian, female, 28 years old, from Beijing. This is the victim of the first kidnapping case in his previous life. The police had very little information about the victim. It is only recorded that she is the CEO of a company in Beijing. Why is this happening? The 28-year-old company CEO looks very awesome to ordinary people. But in the capital city, a place with shallow water and many tortoises, it really doesn't count. Someone once said this: a GG card fell and hit 10 passers-by. 5 of them were officials, 4 were rich, and only 1 was an ordinary person. Exaggeration. Only those who truly know the capital know that this statement is not an exaggeration. On the contrary, the real reality is more exaggerated than many people imagine. The police do not have any more file information on the victim, which can only explain one problem. Mu Qingjian's identity is not simple. He is not only a 28-year-old corporate CEO, but may also have other special identities. Even the police are not qualified to know this special identity. Lin Xian stood in front of the door, stretched out his hand and knocked on the door. As soon as his arms were lowered, the courtyard door opened. Standing inside the door was a plain-dressed, ordinary man with a crew cut. The man is about 30 years old, average-looking, tall and strong. Those eyes with normal eyes glanced lightly. Lin Xian had an illusion in his heart. It was as if a pair of knives had scratched his eyeballs. It made his eyes tingle slightly. This is no ordinary person. Lin Xian's scalp exploded and his body tensed up. It can be clearly seen in the stance and temperament of a crew-cut man. I feel a military spirit. Many wealthy people have bodyguards around them. Many bodyguards are retired military personnel. But the crew-cut man in front of him was different from ordinary soldiers. As for what was different, Lin Xian couldn't tell. "What's wrong with you?" the flat-headed man asked. "Yes." Lin Xian smiled slightly, "I came to see my sister." "Your sister?" The flat-headed man was slightly stunned. "Right." Lin Xian smiled broadly and said, "Mu Qingjian." The flat-headed man was silent, narrowed his eyes, and his gaze instantly became sharp. After rebirth, Lin Xian found that his body became a little strange. It seems that you can easily sense the temperament or breath of certain people. At this moment, he felt pressure on the man in front of him. Terrible pressure, or evil energy. "Are you kidding?" the crew-cut man asked coldly. "How do you know it's a joke?" Lin Xian's smile remained unchanged, and his eyes were smiling. The crew-cut man remained silent again and stepped aside. Lin Xian walked into the courtyard and looked at the man with a dull look as he closed the door. "Follow me." The flat-headed man walked towards the courtyard. Lin Xian, who was following behind, was smiling, but his heart was pounding. At the same time, he also felt that there seemed to be a pair of eyes watching him. And these gazes came from one room in the courtyard. At the same time, Lin Xuanyu felt that he was locked by something. And this thing might kill him at any time. He was a little confused about his own perception. It seems that after rebirth, the body is still his body. Something seems not quite right. Then Lin Xian, a flat-headed man, walked into a room. "It's a small living room. Sit." The man pointed to a chair and took out a mobile phone. After Lin Xian sat down, the man opened a facial recognition software. He glanced at Lin Xian's face. Next moment, Lin Xian's personal information appeared on the man's mobile phone. The man looked at the information on his phone for a few times and his expression became strange. He raised his head and looked at Lin Xian as if he were looking at some strange creature. "You said you are Mu Qingjian's younger brother." "Right." Lin Xian had a smile in his eyes. "I came here this time to stay at my sister's house for a few days, and I have one more thing to say to my sister." The expression on the crew-cut man's face became even weirder. "That look is like looking at a psycho." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 3. In the living room at the back of the courtyard, a young woman in luxurious clothes was looking at a tablet. Her beautiful eyes suddenly turned cold, her eyebrows drooped, and a hint of coldness appeared on her beautiful cheeks. Her temperament was like a fairy in the moon palace, cold and profound. Her eyes were deep and cold, as if hiding endless wisdom. Her beauty was like the bright stars, the most beautiful in the country. She was exactly the person Lin Xian wanted to see. Mu Qingjian. Brother. Her mouth corners slightly raised. A soft arc appeared on her plump lips. But there was no warmth in those beautiful eyes. Cold, doubtful, playful, eyes kept changing. She was about to tell the guards to send the big boy to the police station. Suddenly. "Sister, I'm so bored." A lazy and perfect figure walked into the living room. Her voice was very coquettish, and with a hint of charm. Her appearance is breathtakingly beautiful. Her eyebrows are green without any makeup, and her lips are red without any makeup. Her delicate cheeks are flawless and white, and her cheeks are whiter than snow. Her sparkling eyes are shining with the light of stars. She can faintly see a hint of seductive charm. When I see her, I will think of a poem. There is a girl who is so charming that she is charming to the bones. She is Mu Qingjian's sister. Mu Qingtian. When the two sisters sit together, an amazing scene appears. The two girls actually have the same face and figure. What is even more surprising is that they are exactly the same person. One is as cold as a fairy, and the other is as charming as a demon. There is a person who claims to be our brother and wants to see us. Mu Qingjian raised her eyebrows slightly, and there was a hint of sarcasm in her phoenix eyes. Brother? Mu Qingtian narrowed her eyes rolling, is this true? It looks like fun. Fun. Mu Qingjian didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and looked at her heartless sister with a smile. Are you stupid? This little idiot, if she and her family hadn't taken care of him. Maybe he would help others count money if he was sold. I'm not stupid. Mu Qingtian held her sister's arm and swayed back and forth, puffing her cheeks. The way she spoke and acted, she looked like a little girl. Okay, not stupid. Mu Qingjian's eyes were full of pampering, pinching her sister's white cheeks. Go play, I have something to deal with. Wow, brother is so handsome. Mu Qingtian pointed at Lin Xian on the tablet. He's much better looking than the stars in the brainless dramas, and he doesn't look like a bad guy. Mu Qingjian. Appearance is justice? This stupid child is hopeless. Don't chase him away. Mu Qingtian rolled her eyes and hugged her sister. Ask him what he wants to do. Mu Qingjian put away the smile on her face and glanced at her sister. Seeing a sly flash in those charming eyes. Sometimes, even she can't understand her sister. Is she really stupid? There is a saying that goes very well. High-end hunters often appear as prey. Weak little sheep are the most dangerous. Lin Xian followed the flat-headed man to the backyard. Walked into the spacious living room. A simple and elegant atmosphere came to his face. Every piece of furniture in the living room has been baptized by the years, showing the ultimate luxury in a low-key manner. It exudes a quiet and mysterious atmosphere, which makes people feel a calm and elegant taste. When he walked into the living room for the first time, Lin Xian's sight was attracted by a jade beauty on the sofa. The beauty of the woman is definitely the most beautiful one among the girls he has seen in his 2 lives, and it is indescribable. Facing such a beautiful woman who is as beautiful as jade and as beautiful as a fairy. As long as he is still a man, he will be stunned. Lin Xian's eyes swept across the chest of the beautiful woman. It's not that he deliberately wanted to pay attention. But the beauty's chest is very unscientific. It's hard not to pay attention. She is a woman that cannot be grasped by one hand. Why are you in a daze? Why don't you say anything when you see your sister? A charming voice sounded, and Mu Qingtian blinked her eyes. Sister, Lin Xian's mouth twitched. He could see the teasing in the eyes of the woman in front of him. He could also hear the teasing in the other party's tone. Mu Qingtian. Lin Xian, Omega. The two looked at each other in silence. For a long while. What do you mean by not talking? Mu Qingtian wrinkled her nose, quite like a little girl. I just want to be a quiet handsome man, Lin Xian complained in his heart, and said, I'm glad to see you. Really? Mu Qingtian made a face at him, how happy? Lin Xian's mouth twitched, very happy. You are too happy too early. Mu Qingtian giggled, isn't it, my brother? Lin Xian. A little painful. It can be seen that the woman in front of him is a little weird and teasing maliciously. Sister, stop it. Lin Xian smiled and walked towards Mu Qingtian. Instantly. The eyes of the flat-headed man behind him were as sharp as a knife. Just when he was about to make a move, he saw Mu Qingtian stroked his hair. Make a hidden gesture to him. The flat-headed man rushed towards Lin Xian's figure and stopped abruptly without further action. But his eyes were fixed on Lin Xian, watching him sit next to Mu Qingtian. Sitting down, Lin Xian felt a chill on his spine, and cold sweat oozed out of his back. Just now, he sensed the terrifying murderous aura behind him. He also knew that the murderous aura came from the flat-headed man. The strange thing was that the flat-headed man did not stop him. Relieved, Lin Xian sat down on the sofa obediently. "Sister, I'm hungry." He ran to find Mu Qingjian early in the morning, not to mention food, he didn't even drink water. He came to save Mu Qingjian, eating her food, it's not too much, right? Haha. Mu Qingtian smiled like a flower, tilted her head, and looked at him curiously. She shouted to a distance, "Sister Zhao, please bring some food." It didn't take long. A middle-aged woman dressed as a servant brought some food. Put it on the coffee table in front of Lin Xian and Mu Qingtian. Before leaving, the woman glanced at Lin Xian. Lin Xian was puzzled, looking at the woman's back. The woman looked at him with a strange look. "Eat quickly." Mu Qingtian stretched out her white jade-like hand and patted Lin Xian's shoulder. "Play with your sister after eating." "I'm not here to play." Lin Xian sighed faintly, picked up the cake and started eating. "I will stay with you for a few days in the future." "How many days?" Mu Qingtian had a surprised expression on her face, but her eyes were curved with an obvious smile. "Okay." "No, is this woman sick?" Now it was Lin Xian's turn to be a little surprised, staring at her in a daze. "Why does she look a little unintelligent?" "That's right." Mu Qingtian clapped her hands and said softly, "Didn't you say you had something to tell your sister?" Lin Xian paused and put down the cake. "A little. Make a very dangerous move. Turn around and get close to Mu Qingtian. What I want to say is..." Lin Xian's lips were close to her ear. "Someone wants to kidnap you. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet." Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 4. Mu Qingtian's delicate body stiffened and her expression was dull. Because of Lin Xian's approach and those words. He wanted to avoid the other person's body, but paused because of his words. Quietly looking at the handsome face close at hand, looking into Lin Xian's eyes. Those eyes are clear, bright, and sincere, unable to see distracting thoughts. This was the first time she used beautiful to describe a boy's eyes. Mu Qingtian knew her appearance very well. "I know even more clearly how those boys can't walk when they see me. Each one looks like a greedy wolf." But she didn't see these in the big boy in front of her. Sudden. Mu Qingtian not only did not retreat, but leaned closer. She snuggled into Lin Xian's arms as if she was throwing herself into his arms. His head hung on Lin Xian's shoulder and his lips curled up, seemingly throwing himself into his arms. In fact, he used his body to block Lin Xian. However, at this time, Lin Xian's face was very pale. White sweat broke out on his forehead. The moment he approached the woman in front of him, he felt extremely dangerous. The thing that had been locking him since he entered the living room erupted with murderous intent. At the same time, the flat-headed man also exuded terrifying murderous intent. Lin Xian's intuition told him that he was going to die. "I finally figured out what was locking me. I figured out why the man with the crew cut was obviously a soldier, but he didn't look like one. There is a kind of gun called a sniper rifle. There is a kind of soldier called a guard." Lin Xian recalled the archive information about Mu Qingjian in his previous life. There was very little information on that document, which showed that her identity was not simple. Lin Xian guessed at that time that Mu Qingjian was probably a second generation. At the moment of life and death crisis, he was already very sure of his guess. "Are you going to die again?" Lin Xian smiled bitterly. "I am a reborn person after all, can you show me some respect?" Sudden. Lin Xian was stunned. He stared blankly at the beauty nestling in his arms. The next second, the two terrifying murderous auras disappeared without a trace. It's like it never appeared. Of course, Lin Xian was not the only one who was dumbfounded at this time. A certain beauty who secretly observed the two of them was also dumbfounded. Together with the crew-cut man who was about to charge, everyone was stunned. And outside the courtyard, on a high point a few hundred meters away, a sniper holding a sniper rifle, messy in the wind. Looking at the man and woman cuddling each other, their brains all shut down. Is what you said true? Mu Qingtian had a pear-shaped expression on her face. She chuckled in Lin Xian's ear and asked in a low voice that only the two of them could hear, is there really someone who wants to kidnap me? Lin Xian, who came back to his senses, said dryly, do you believe it? Why don't you believe it? Mu Qingtian puffed out her cheeks, would you lie to your sister? Lin Xian. Take a look at her clear and stupid eyes. No, how did this girl live to be so old? Sai Heiwen. Back bedroom. Say it. Mu Qingtian sat lazily on the bed. A pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes are sparkling, watery, and extremely alluring. Facing this charming and demon-like beauty in front of me, she has a troublesome appearance. Lin Xian's heart was a little restless, someone wants to kidnap you. I don't know who they are yet. As for why I know, I can't say now. If you believe it, I will try my best to help you find the kidnappers in the next 5 days. If you don't believe it, you can think of what I said as fart. However, I suggest you call the police directly. If you do that, it will probably scare the kidnappers away. It might be difficult to catch them again. After saying these words, Lin Xian felt a lot more relaxed all over. He couldn't control what Mu Qingtian would choose next. Leave it to fate. Mu Qingtian narrowed her eyes. His eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of mist, as he stared straight at the big boy in front of him. She pouted and said sweetly, I hate using my brain so much. I don't care. His body tilted and he fell on the bed, purring like a kitten. Lin Xian? Sudden. The door to the private bathroom in the bedroom opened, and a beautiful figure walked in. When you see the other person's appearance. Lin Xian. I rub it, the two of them are in love? Haha, sister, look at him, it's so funny. Mu Qingtian was lying on the bed, her branches trembling with laughter and twitching. That foxy face with messy hair was filled with happiness. Mu Qingtian rolled her eyes at her sister helplessly. He glanced at Lin Xian, who was stunned. He couldn't help but curl up his lips, suppressing a smile. In the past, her younger sister often pulled her along and cheated on people together. Mainly because she and her sister look exactly the same. Unless the people closest to you can't tell the difference at all. Many people will be startled and think they have seen a ghost. I can tell you're not lying. Mu Qingtian looked directly at Lin Xian, but can you explain why you came to tell us when you knew someone was going to kidnap us? Twins. Lin Xian recovered from the shock with a toothache, can you see that I didn't lie? The woman in front of me is so cold, like an ice beauty. Mu Qingtian said calmly, micro-expression psychology. Lin Xian's heart trembled. Yes, micro-expression psychology can indeed tell whether a person is lying. A person's fleeting facial expressions can reveal a person's true feelings and emotions. As a police officer, micro-expression psychology is a required course, specially used to interrogate criminals. Determine whether a criminal is lying through his eyes, expressions, and actions. What he didn't expect was that the woman in front of him actually understood the psychology of micro-expressions. I can't say. Lin Xian felt a little guilty, but his expression and eyes were calm, it's up to you to believe it or not. Cannot say. Mu Qingtian looked at him, her eyes as dark as a deep pool, tell me your plan. Aren't you afraid that I will lie to you? Lin Xian had a lump stuck in his throat and didn't know whether he should vomit. Since you came to us, you know more or less who we are. Mu Qingtian pursed her lips, you should know what will happen if you lie to us, right? Well done, Lin Xian couldn't help but want to curse. Sure enough, the more beautiful a woman is, the more dangerous she is. Grandmaster, you will not deceive me. My plan is simple. Lin Xian said weakly, observe secretly and find these kidnappers. Don't want to alert the enemy. Mu Qingjian nodded, I guess those kidnappers are about to take action, right? Did she guess it, or something? Lin Xian's eyes flashed, that's right. Mu Qingjian's next words made him unable to remain calm. If you guessed correctly. Mu Qingjian's eyes showed a cold luster, is there something wrong with the people around me? Damn it, awesome, 666. Lin Xian looked surprised, and was amazed in his heart. This woman's IQ is a bit scary. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Xiun Zhong. Chapter 5. Lin Xian didn't say much about the kidnapping case. But the other party could find out from his words that there was something wrong with the people around him. This was not something that ordinary people could think of. It also coincided with his thoughts. But it didn't mean that there must be something wrong with the people around Mu Qingjian. There are many possibilities. As for what it is, Lin Xian needs to check it out himself. More importantly, it requires the cooperation of the two sisters in front of him. You want to pretend to be our brother, don't want the kidnappers to find anything unusual. Mu Qingjian smiled, live here to find clues through this relationship. Smart, Lin Xian nodded, yes. However, he immediately felt something was wrong. Why were they the only ones talking? Why was the one on the bed so quiet? Turning his head, Lin Xian was stunned. Mu Qingtian on the bed actually fell asleep. So heartless. Mu Qingjian's eyes were also looking at her sister on the bed, why are you confident that you can find the kidnappers? Being questioned, Lin Xian was not angry. It's normal for the other party to have such thoughts. It would be weird if the other party didn't question it. Someone comes to your house and says someone wants to kidnap you. You can't call the police to avoid alerting the enemy, and you still want to catch these kidnappers. The most important thing is, the other party is not a policeman, but a young man in his 20s. Any normal person would find it hard to accept, right? Not me, I'm only responsible for finding them. Lin Xian laughed dryly, you can handle the arrest, or call the police. Mu Qingjian smiled coldly, it means that the other party has a lot of people and weapons. Sister, you always do this, it will make me look stupid. Lin Xian rolled his eyes, there may be high-powered weapons. Do you know what you are talking about? Mu Qingjian put away her smile, this is the capital of Dragon Country, how can high-powered weapons come in? Lin Xian did not explain anything. Just as Mu Qingjian thought. Dragon Country, a country with strict gun bans to the point of abnormality. Even toy guns with a little power are not allowed to appear. Someone can bring submachine guns, rifles, grenades, and pistols into the capital. This is just like telling a story as a joke. But this group of kidnappers did it. Each of them had a weapon. Just if. The kidnappers used these weapons not for kidnapping, but for terrorist attacks. Can you imagine the consequences? You can just pretend you don't know about these things. Facing Lin Xian's silence, Mu Qingjian's expression was solemn, the words you ran over to say will bring you a lot of trouble. Facing those kidnappers, your life may be in danger, why did you come? Good question. Lin Xian also wanted to ask himself, why did he come? Isn't it clear that if he said today that there were kidnappers who wanted to kidnap Mu Qingjian, he would be in big trouble? When someone investigates him in the future, how will he explain it? There is another possibility. Will he die again when facing those kidnappers? Because Lin Xian was silent for a while, I'm a policeman. The police are responsible for eliminating violence and preventing illegal and criminal activities. If you find a crisis or case that threatens the people, you have to go with your eyes closed. Otherwise, do you deserve that police uniform? Mukinjian looked at the big boy in front of him. A little. A smile appeared on her cheeks, no longer cold. A gentle smile, warm eyes. A restaurant in the courtyard. Lin Xian, who was sitting at the table, was eating food with big mouthfuls. But he was confused and a little puzzled. He never thought that things would go so smoothly. It was so smooth that it was unbelievable. The Mu sisters actually believed him easily and cooperated with his investigation. There must be something wrong when things are abnormal. Lin Xian ate his meal absent-mindedly. The reason is very simple. If a stranger came to you and said to you, "I know how to buy lottery tickets to win 5 million, as long as you take out 100,000 yuan and buy it according to my method, you will win." Would you believe the stranger's words? The Mu sisters believed it. This is not scientific. Lin Xian smelled the smell of werewolf. While eating, he looked at the flat-headed man not far away. Hey, why does he look like he has eaten feces? This is normal. After all, Lin Xian was a stranger before. In a blink of an eye, he became the younger brother of the Mu sisters. Normal people will not only be blinded, but also have their brains sprained. Lin Xian's actions not only short-circuited his brain. Even the CPU was burned out. At noon, the sunlight sprinkled through the window into the warm living room. It seemed to be injected with vitality and vitality. Lin Xian sat quietly on the sofa in the living room, playing with his mobile phone. He was not in a hurry to investigate, and there was no point in being anxious. Just entered the courtyard and stayed beside the two girls. If his behavior was abnormal, it would be easy to be discovered by some interested people, including the kidnappers. The most critical point. What method did the kidnappers use to monitor the Mu sisters? Although Lin Xian investigated the kidnapping case in his previous life, he only assisted in the investigation. This level of case is handled by a special task force, and the city's police force cooperates. So he didn't know much about some details in the case. For example, Lin Xian didn't know the true identity of the Mu sisters in his previous life. It's different now. The identities of the Mu sisters have been discovered. Horrible. Otherwise, why would there be guards around them? If I guessed correctly, there are snipers outside. These people are protecting the Mu sisters 24 hours a day. Under such protection, the kidnappers can still successfully kidnap Mukinjian. Don't you think it's scary? Under normal circumstances, there is only one inference. There may be something wrong with the people around the Mu sisters, leaking their daily activity routes and whereabouts. But the police investigated in the previous life and found no suspects. Isn't it strange? What method did the kidnappers use? Can they accurately know the whereabouts of the Mu sisters, under the protection of guards? Commit the crime and kidnap successfully? Lin Xian began to analyze the case. Pondering over and over again, reviewing over and over again. Suddenly, "Little brother, come and play with your sister." The coquettish words sounded in my ears. At some point, Mu Qingtian lazily sat on the sofa. Her moist and thin lips pouted. "Sister is so bored." Lin Xian deliberately said humorously, "What are you playing, the Emperor and the Concubine?" Mu Qingtian's eyes lit up. "Is it fun?" "Concubine, I want to play blindfolded butterfly catching." Lin Xian, who was driving in his heart, wanted to laugh. There was also an illusion. The beauty in front of him had an IQ of at least a 3-year-old child. Could it be the legendary Silly and Sweet? Looking at Mu Qingtian's innocent, curious, and expectant eyes, Lin Xian felt guilty for bullying a silly child again. He couldn't help but blurt out, "What do you want to play?" "I'll play with you." Mu Qingtian smiled brightly, "Okay." But soon, Lin Xian regretted what he said. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Jeon. Chapter 6. Zioxwenzi, wait. Okay, Queen. Lin Xian helped Mu Qingtian out of the room and strolled in the courtyard. The two began role-playing. Mu Qingtian played the queen, and he played the eunuch. What kind of human suffering is this? Lin Xian wanted to cry but had no tears. It was rare for someone to play with Mu Qingtian, and she was so happy now. Pretending, it seemed like a real queen inspecting her territory. With a smile on her lips and a look of anger in her eyes, she was as proud as a hen. I'm tired. Mu Qingtian's cheeks bloomed with a bright smile, and she stopped. What should I do? What the hell should I do? Lin Xian had a sentence in his heart. Move you a chair. I don't want a chair. Mu Qingtian's eyes sparkled. I want to ride a horse. Lin Xian? Seeing Mu Qingtian's sparkling eyes, staring straight at him. I equals horse? She wants to ride me. Lin Xian almost exploded on the spot. You are dreaming. How can a man of 8 feet tall be ridden by a woman? Don't talk about the beauty in front of you, and don't talk about the warm man. In Lin Xian's Sigma thinking, warm men are ranked behind dogs. You don't keep your word. Mu Qingtian twisted her body, looking like she was going to throw a tantrum. You clearly promised to play with me. Lin Xian softened his tone, changed to someone else. I won't. Mu Qingtian's voice began to sob, with a crying tone, aggrieved. She also pretended to wipe her tears. I humming. Lin Xian's scalp was numb. Because it's rare to see a girl cry, he was a little hesitant to face the scene. Finding that Lin Xian was a little at a loss, Mu Qingtian, who was pretending to cry, had a sparkling look in her eyes. I was surprised. He seemed to be afraid of girls crying? If so. Mu Qingtian's eyelashes trembled, and her eyes instantly turned red. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Damn, Lin Xian wanted to swear and looked at her in astonishment. Mu Qingtian cried more and more sadly, wiping her tears. You are wrong. What did I do wrong? Lin Xian wanted to cry but had no tears. Just wanted to say that Sigma men never surrender. But he saw Mu Qingtian's tearful and crying face. Lin Xian rolled his eyes. I was wrong. Are you still bullying your sister? No. Do you listen to my sister? Yes. I want to ride a horse. Okay. Lin Xian squatted down tiredly. Forget it, she is still a child. Haha. Mu Qingtian cried and laughed, showing her 2 little tiger teeth, and proudly stretched out her long legs, riding on Lin Xian's shoulders, hugging his head. Gee, go faster. Lin Xian stood up and was surprised to find that he didn't feel how heavy Mu Qingtian was on his body. Something is wrong. Mu Qingtian is over 1.7 meters tall and weighs over 90 kilograms. A normal person would not be able to carry a weight of more than 90 kilograms so easily. Lin Xian did not feel how heavy it was. Is it reasonable? Recalling that his perception has become stronger. At this time, he can carry Mu Qingtian more easily. Lin Xian was confused. Oh my god, what is going on? In the living room, Mu Qingtian, who was sitting on the sofa, looked at the men and women playing in the yard with complicated eyes. It can be seen that the quirky sister is bullying the brother. Only those who really understand Mu Qingtian know that this seemingly silly girl is a natural drama queen. Drama queens are not scary, but what is scary is that this drama queen used to graduate from drama major. Mu Qingtian sighed silently. Since childhood, my sister has liked singing, dancing, and performing. Unfortunately, she was born in a family like theirs, and the elders do not allow them to show their faces. This is not only smearing the family, but also ruining the family's reputation. Mu Qingtian, who could not fulfill her wish, was less and less happy. She became a little autistic, didn't like to go home, and lived with her every day. She never left the house. She became a little homegirl. Listening to the long-lost laughter in the yard, Mu Qingjian's eyes moved to Lin Xian. Her beautiful eyes gradually became soft. Maybe having a younger brother is not bad. Your Majesty, come and catch me, haha. Mu Qingtian's voice was particularly soft and cute. She giggled like a hen, looking at the blindfolded Lin Xian. Playing the game of emperor and concubine, it was so happy. Lin Xian was tired while playing with Mu Qingtian. At the same time, he used the stronger perception to detect the surroundings. As he became more familiar with the stronger perception, he could easily perceive the surrounding sight and qi. For example, Lin Xian could sense that there were as many as 9 eyes watching him and Mu Qingtian. Among them were Mu Qingjian, the flat-headed man, the sniper, and 6 eyes in a room. Mu Qingjian's eyes had changed from cold to gentle. The flat-headed man's eyes were always cold. The sniper's eyes were highly tense. Whenever he and Mu Qingtian got too close or intimate, the other 6 eyes would also change constantly, as if they would rush out at any time to press him to the ground and rub him. Lin Xian was shocked by his magical perception. Very confused. Suppose the kidnappers want to attack the Mu sisters. It is necessary to monitor the Mu sisters anytime and anywhere. With the 9 sights in front of him, Lin Xian could sense that there was no malice. It means that there is nothing wrong with the crew-cut man, the sniper, and the 6 lines of sight. Apart from them, there is only one nanny left, Sister Zhao. Lin Xian had met the Sister Zhao once. It can be noticed that she is looking at Mu Qingtian with eyes full of love. It's also strange, why would a servant look at the Mu sisters like this? Through conversation, Mu Qingjian told him. The mother was weak when she gave birth to them, and her milk supply was insufficient. Sister Zhao is their nanny. Therefore, Sister Zhao can also be trusted. Lin Xian was a little confused. Everyone in the courtyard has no problem. So how did the kidnappers do it? Lin Xian didn't want to play around with Mu Qingtian, business was more important. Although she was blindfolded, she reached out and grabbed her wrist. I caught my beloved concubine. Geez, you're annoying. Mu Qingtian looked angrily at Lin Xian, who took off the handkerchief from his eyes. He stretched out his foot and gave him a shadowless kick. Sudden. Lin Xian stretched out his arms and hugged her. Mu Qingtian was dumbfounded and forgot to struggle. Mu Qingjian's expression in the living room suddenly changed, and his eyes revealed a piercing murderous intent. The crew-cut man rushed to the living room door. The sniper in the distance had opened the safety of the sniper rifle and locked onto Lin Xian. In a certain room, there were 6 young men who looked like cheetahs. Prepare to rush out of the room and rush towards Lin Xian. But the next second, Mu Qingtian stretched out her hands and wrapped her arms around Lin Xian's waist. The world seemed to have been put on pause. Everyone froze in place. Looking at the men and women embracing each other like lovers in the courtyard, they lost their minds. And all this, just because Lin Xian said something in Mu Qingtian's ear. I feel someone is watching us. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Xiun Zhong. Chapter 7. When Mu Qingtian heard Lin Xian's words, her tense and delicate body trembled slightly. Relaxed again, like a bird clinging to someone. Not only did she snuggle into Lin Xian's arms, she also stretched out her arms to wrap around his waist. Really? If you lie to your sister and eat someone else's tofu on purpose, you will be miserable. How miserable? Sister will beat you to death. I'm so scared. Lin Xian suppressed his inner restlessness. It has to be said that Mu Qingtian's figure is amazing. The feeling of being held in my arms is so enjoyable. Especially that slender waist. It feels very nice. Lin Xian used his enhanced perception to sense the strange sight with his heart. The reason why he said it was strange was because he found that this line of sight was not actually a human line of sight. Since it's not human, what could be looking at him and Mu Qingtian? Lin Xian put his arms around Mu Qingtian's waist and deliberately lowered his head to pretend to be intimate. She buried her cheek in Mu Qingtian's hair. The place where the suspicious sight appeared from the corner of my eye. Mu Qingtian's face had already turned red. The watery peach blossom eyes were half lidded and half opened, as if angry. While his face was flushed, his head was already leaning on Lin Xian's shoulder. My mind became a little confused and my mind became extremely confused. It turns out to be a camera. Lin Xian sneered in his heart. After all, I never expected that someone would install a camera in the Mu sisters' courtyard. And the camera is very many, hidden in the stone sculptures in the yard. The stone sculpture must have been placed in the yard for a long time, how many years ago? Thinking of this, Lin Xian was even more surprised. If the kidnapping case is related to the camera and it is a tool for committing the crime, doesn't it mean that the kidnappers had selected the Mu sisters as their targets a few years ago? If this is the case, this group of kidnappers is a bit powerful. He has patience, intelligence, means, and the ability to kidnap Mu Qingtian under the protection of the guards. Isn't it scary? Lin Xian forced himself to get rid of all negative emotions and calm down his brain. I want to engage in criminal investigation and solve crimes. A calm mind is a must. To have clear ideas. Use this to conduct rigorous reasoning. At this time, a kitten murmured in his arms, "Have you found it?" "Found it?" Lin Xian continued to pretend to be intimate, and brought the corner of his mouth to Mu Qingtian's ear. "There is a camera inside the stone sculpture." It turns out that he didn't lie to me, and he didn't mean to take advantage. Mu Qingtian raised the corners of her mouth. A little happy, but also a little strangely disappointed. "What's the matter, little brother? If a beautiful woman throws herself into your arms, you won't even bother. Is there something wrong?" Lin Xian asked softly, "When did you sisters move into this courtyard house? The stone carvings look old. There is a camera inside which should be of the wireless type. 99% of wireless cameras require batteries, otherwise how would they work? If there is a battery, it must be charged. If you don't charge it, it can be used for up to half a year. It's been 3 years." Mu Qingtian seemed to have adapted to Lin Xian's embrace. She twisted her body and moved into a more comfortable position, leaning in his arms. She murmured, "My sister bought the house. She spent 1 billion at that time." 1 billion, Lin Xian took a breath. In fact, many people don't know much about courtyard houses. For example, the famous Prince Gong used to be He Shen's house. A golden Nanmu pillar is worth billions. Even though there are courtyards everywhere in Beijing, the difference is huge. 3 years ago, Lin Xian frowned, the camera's battery cannot last that long. His eyes scanned the stone carvings through Mu Qingtian's black hair. The stone sculptures in front of you, or the wall. There is a vivid carved dragon disc on it, which should be made by everyone. The hidden location of the camera is inside the dragon's nose. Through the angle gap, it should be possible to take pictures and monitor everything in the yard. Lin Xian rolled his eyes and let go of the beauty in his arms. With a sunny smile on her face, she suddenly pinched her straight nose and said, "My beloved, you are so beautiful." "Ah, how dare you pinch someone?" Mu Qingtian screamed and threw herself at him in embarrassment. Lin Xian laughed, turned around and ran away. Mu Qingtian chased after him angrily. The two ran wildly in the yard. Lin Xian deliberately led Mu Qingtian towards the stone sculpture. "Run past the stone statue and avoid the surveillance camera." Entering the blind spot of surveillance, He stopped and his face darkened. Mu Qingtian, who was chasing me, screamed, "I'll beat you to death." Although he shouted so, he did not take action. Follow Lin Xian's line of sight and look at the stone sculpture. The red and tender mouth opened and closed silently. Is it? Lin Xian nodded slowly, but said, "I can't hit you, I'll make you mad." "Oh, how dare you spank my sister?" Mu Qingtian continued to scream and get angry. "Haha, it feels so good." Lin Xian also shouted with a smile. The two acted so realistically. The people who were watching them were already petrified, or shocked. Looking at them was like looking at two idiots. But also through their expressions, and where they look. Soon, these people also discovered something was wrong. Stare at the stone sculpture. Everyone looked surprised or frowned slightly. "You hate it, you just know how to bully your sister, Mu Qingtian was addicted to acting and looked at Lin Xian with joy. "What a monster!" Lin Xian felt a little angry, but asked, "Are you being bullied?" "I won't tell you." Mu Qingtian smiled foolishly, a smile blooming on her face. "Those charming and beautiful peach blossom eyes are as seductive as you want." Lin Xian couldn't hold it anymore and looked away. "I'm sweating all over from running. I'm going to take a shower. Do you want sister to accompany you?" Mu Qing's peach blossom eyes, as sweet as stars, flashed with water, and she asked with a giggle. "Damn," Lin Xian ran away. "Ha ha ha." Mu Qingtian put her hands on her hips, looked up to the sky and laughed, extremely arrogant. Wait for the two of them to walk back to the living room of the back house. Mu Qingjian was staring at them with a strange and extremely complicated look. Lin Xian and Mu Qingtian's faces suddenly turned red, and they did not dare to look at Mu Qingjian. "You two are having a very perverted game." Mu Qingjian's eyes were calm and her voice was light. "Tell me, what did you find?" Lin Xian pretended to cough to cover up his embarrassment. He told Mu Qingjian about the discovery of the camera. As expected, Mu Qingjian's expression changed, and she looked coldly at the short-haired man not far away. There was shame on the man's cold face. This kind of mistake is too big and is dereliction of duty. If you make this mistake while protecting the chief, they, the guards, can go to court-martial. Mu Qingjian looked at Lin Xian with a cold expression. "What are you going to do next?" Lin Xian's eyes gradually became sinister and cold. "I want to play a game. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet." Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 8. Do you want to divert their attention from us sisters to you? Mu Qingjian stared at Lin Xian in front of her thoughtfully, guessing what he wanted to do. How to do this? Money. Isn't the reason why the kidnappers committed the crime of kidnapping for money? If there is a way to let the kidnappers get more money than kidnapping, and this method is much safer than kidnapping, will they be tempted? It's like a person looking for a job and applying for two companies. One company's work is very tiring and dangerous, with a monthly salary of 3,000. The other company's work is easy, not dangerous, and the monthly salary is 10,000. What would you choose? Lin Xian nodded. I need your cooperation. How to cooperate? Mu Qingtian's charming voice came from the side. A little hoarse and a little coquettish. Lin Xian glanced at Mu Qingtian. Act with me. Looked at Mu Qingjian again. Prepare 2 billion in cash. Act. Mu Qingtian was delighted. I love it the most. 2 billion in cash. Mu Qingjian glanced at him. Do you know how heavy that money is? How many boxes are needed to put it in? I know. Lin Xian's expression was flat. A 100 yuan banknote weighs about 1.15 grams, and the volume of 100 million is about 1.2 cubic meters. Any small room can hold 2 billion. It's not as big as people imagine. What a cocky! The Mu sisters looked at each other, their mouths twitched, and they tried not to laugh. Facing the eyes of the Mu sisters, Lin Xian laughed awkwardly. Okay, he's just used to bragging and pretending. In fact, let alone 2 billion, he has never seen more than 200,000 in cash. After all, no one would be so idle as to take out so much cash just to take a look. Too dangerous. Mu Qingjian shook her head slightly. I'll let someone else do this. Let's not talk about whether it's dangerous or not. Lin Xian looked straight into the eyes of the iceberg beauty in front of him. Are you sure I can't solve it? It's easy to make sure. Mu Qingjian looked at the flat-headed man, old 5. The flat-headed man came in front of him. As long as you can beat him. Mu Qingjian pointed at the flat-headed man. I'll promise you. Lin Xian, Omega. You don't talk about martial ethics, right? You don't even need to think about it. Can an ordinary person beat a guard? They may not even need to use weapons. They can beat you to death in a minute. But when he saw a trace of mockery in the flat-headed man's eyes, an evil fire instantly emerged in his chest. Okay. Lin Xian stared at old 5, let's play. Old 5. The way he looked at Lin Xian was very strange. It was as if he was looking at a person with a defective brain. There are only 2 consequences of a defective brain. 1. Idiot. 2. Vegetative. There is a general term for these 2 types of people, brain dead. When Lao Wu walked towards him, Lin Xian regretted it. Humans are such complicated animals. When they are impulsive, they like to do some brainless things. The more impulsive, the more they like to do it. While being impulsive, they are also stimulated. If you are not careful, you will kill yourself. Can I regret it? Lin Xian was very melancholy in his heart, but his expression was fearless. Although he had no confidence that he could beat the active guards, he had the ability to withstand blows. He really didn't believe that these legendary guards with swords in front of the emperor were really that awesome. The 2 stood 1 meter apart and looked at each other. Are you ready? Lao Wu smiled. Come on. Lin Xian was calm. Suddenly, Lao Wu raised his hand and punched. The fist brought strong power and strong wind pressure. It appeared in front of Lin Xian in an instant. But Lin Xian's expression changed. It became very strange. It was not fear, panic, or dread, but astonishment. Because after he was highly nervous and fully focused, he could actually see all of Lao Wu's movements clearly. From raising his hand, swinging his fist, and hitting, this series of movements became extremely slow. In Lin Xian's eyes, that slowness was like a turtle crawling. All turned into slow motion. As long as he wanted, he could easily dodge this punch. Lin Xian did just that. He moved his feet sideways and leaned sideways. Then he saw the fist moving slowly in front of him. What happened to my body? Lin Xian was shocked. He looked at the empty fist and slowly retracted it. He thought of his perception that had become somewhat powerful, and the strength that he could not feel the weight of carrying Mu Qingtian. At this time, he could still see the speed of Lao Wu's punch. All of them showed that there were strange changes in his body. 2 words emerged in Lin Xian's mind. Cheats. In the past, he liked to read novels very much. He had never eaten pork, but he had seen pigs walk. In novels, there are often systems, abilities, and golden fingers. People with these abilities are collectively called cheaters. Lao Wu was also a little confused. The little guy in front of him actually dodged his fist. It was a little unbelievable. In his eyes, Lin Xian was just an ordinary boy in his 20s. First, he had never been a soldier. Second, he has not received any training. Third, he is an ordinary person. How can he avoid his fist? But before Lao Wu could react, suddenly, Lin Xian's voice suddenly sounded beside him with a teasing tone, is it my turn? Lao Wu's eyes blurred and he lost the figure of Lin Xian. The strong sense of danger almost suffocated him. After all, he is a soldier, a top soldier. His reaction speed is much better than that of ordinary people. In an instant, Lao Wu turned around and punched in the direction where the words came from. Fast, so fast that ordinary people's vision could hardly keep up. And at this moment, Lao Wu also showed his true strength. While punching, his face had completely changed. Not only did he see Lin Xian, but he also saw the big boy raise his hand. What surprised Lao Wu was Lin Xian's movements were almost the same, and he was the first to arrive. He was actually faster than him in punching. He punched at his fist. Bang! The two fists collided without any fancy moves, making a muffled sound of bone fracture. Lin Xian's terrifying and powerful strength made Lao Wu's body retreat. Not only that, the 5 fingers of Lao Wu's right hand twisted strangely. Not only were the joints injured, but 2 fingers were actually broken. Facing this scene, Mu Qingtian, Mu Qingjian. The 2 sisters looked at Lin Xian as if they were looking at a monster. Lin Xian didn't care about other people's eyes, and didn't feel any excitement. His eyes were fixed on Lao Wu. At this moment, he felt a terrifying life and death crisis in Lao Wu. Why? He could easily see through his movements and knock him down at any time. Where did this life and death threat come from? Lin Xian couldn't understand it. But then, he saw what a real guard was. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Kisiun Zhong. Chapter 9. Lao Wu's eyes changed. He has become emotionless and cold, as if he is not human. His movements also changed, becoming equally not a person, but a killing machine. It was as if a leopard was hunting and pounced on Lin Xian. Eyes, throat, armpits, all attacks are done with all possible means. His moves are deadly and vicious. Extremely fast and extremely fierce. Trade your life for your life, be brave and fearless of death. Faced with this kind of killing method, Lin Xian was shocked. Damn it, you melon kid, what kind of hatred or resentment do you have? But this is what a soldier is. They are the kind of soldiers from the older generation who fight like dragons in the wild and whose blood is black and yellow. Lin Xian no longer evades, instead advances, rubbing his body close to Lao Wu. Bang 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 bang, the 2 fists and feet collided violently. At this point they have no so-called moves. There are no more grinding flowers. Fight for speed and strength to see who is more ruthless and whose bones are stronger. The Mu sisters were stunned by the 2 incredibly powerful men in front of them. Watch them show a brand new fighting style to the world. Looking at the blood splattering from the 2 men in the hall. Looking at the 2 men who looked like monsters, the excitement on their faces was ferocious. Their breathing became a little faster without realizing it. In today's era, men are becoming more and more like women, and women are becoming more and more like men. Some men have long forgotten their masculinity, their bloody nature, and even their responsibilities as men. Just, from ancient times to the present, men are always the most destructive and powerful creatures on this land. Prey, territory, and ethnic groups are all produced by men with their blood, sweat, and lives. Killed out. A woman's bones are also imprinted with the gene of being attached to a powerful man. Because only strong and powerful men can protect their offspring. At this time, the 2 women looked even more powerful. Lin Xian pressed Lao Wu down and beat him. Mu Qingjian's eyes had already become brilliant. Some are amazed, and some are appreciative. Mu Qingtian stuck out her tongue and licked her pink lips. It seems that I am hungry and want to eat something. Snapped. Lin Xian grabbed Lao Wu's neck and slammed him to the ground. Looking at Lao Wu, who had no strength to get up, he said, "You lose." Lao Wu smiled bitterly. Yes, it was such a complete loss. But what kind of monster is this guy? He is obviously not as ruthless as me, can fight like me, or can fight like me. But he just lost. Losing to the opponents in human strength, speed, endurance, defense, and agility. There is a saying that goes well, high-end ingredients only require simple cooking methods. And fighting, the same is true. In the face of absolute speed and power, the so-called moves and ruthlessness. It's all so flashy. In the bathroom. The grinning Lin Xian soaked in the warm bathtub, feeling pain all over his body. Visible to the naked eye, the bruises on his body are quickly dissipating. The physical pain is also disappearing rapidly. Very magical. It seemed possible. Lin Xian was frightened. Became a monster yourself? This resilience is simply unhuman. And his current fighting ability. It seems even more exaggerated. If it was him in the previous life. In the hands of Lao Wu, he couldn't even make 3 moves. If Lao Wu wants to kill him, he will die in 1 move. This is no joke. Thinking of the power of Lao Wu, a word came to Lin Xian's mind. King of soldiers. The king of soldiers refers to some of the strongest men in the military in various military fields. Fighting, combat, technology, the top soldiers in each field. It's obvious that Lao Wu's fighting skills are terrifying. What's even more terrifying is Lin Xian himself. Looking at his hands, his heart was pounding. Excited, and happy, it was impossible to describe his mood at this time. Never thought of it? Not only will he be reborn, but he will also become a loser one day. Leaning against the bathtub, Lin Xian closed his eyes comfortably. With this terrifying ability, I am facing those kidnappers in this life. It shouldn't be difficult to kill them. Sci-Fi living room. The Mu sisters are looking at a piece of information about Lin Xian. In fact, they had already seen Lin Xian's file information. But here comes the problem. The strength that Lin Xian is showing now. It is completely inconsistent with what is recorded in the archives. They knew very well what kind of existence Lao Wu was. Before becoming a guard, he was a strong man in the army. He has won the Army Combat Championship several times in the Army Special Forces contest. And there is such a person who comes from a Special Forces background and is king in the field of combat. He actually lost in a single fight. Can you believe it? The reason why Lin Xian was reinvestigated was also Lao Wu's prompt. Lin Xian was so capable that he was so strong that it was inhuman and unreasonable. The Mu sisters reread the information in front of them. Looking at each other. I have never learned martial arts, let alone fighting. From childhood to adulthood, he seems to be an ordinary child. I graduated from the police academy last year and passed the recruitment exam. In a few days, I will report to the Criminal Investigation Brigade and become a trainee police officer. Faced with such a file. Is there something that cannot be understood by such a young man? Why can he defeat a strong man in the army in combat? Interesting. Mu Qingjian narrowed her beautiful eyes. He has so many secrets. Who cares what secrets he has? Mu Qingtian held her sister's arm like a little nympho, giggling, don't you think he is very strong and handsome? Mu Qingjian's face froze, and then she was annoyed. You have only seen him for 1 day, you are not in love with him. Yes. Mu Qingtian pecked at his head and scratched his jade-like fingers. He is tall, handsome, and can fight. He has never had a girlfriend at the age of 22. How many girls would not like such a boy? Mu Qingjian opened her mouth, but was speechless. But are you trying to say that even if we have someone we like, our parents and grandpa won't agree? Mu Qingtian raised her pretty face and smiled. Humph, I'm not afraid, At worst we can elope. Haha. Mu Qingjian was amused by her stupid sister and rubbed her head. Naive, when will you grow up? The two sisters can never leave Longguo. If they are controlled abroad, it will threaten their family. But if they are in Longguo, where can they run to? Oh, why think so much? Mu Qingtian smiled, just be happy. At worst we can run away with the ball. If they have the ability, they can beat their grandson to death. Mu Qingjian was speechless by her sister's crazy and bold idea. Have you read too many romance novels? But the elders' ideas are not that terrible. They just want their sisters' future partners to be well matched. The problem is, there are boys who are well matched with them. In Longguo, you can count them on one hand. And now is not the time to think about these things. A cold light flashed in Mu Qingjian's eyes. Let's get rid of those kidnappers first and then talk about the future. Thinking of Lin Xian's plan, Mu Qingjian almost laughed. It's really a crazy and bold plan. How dare he? Solving the case is a little bitter, but my sister is super sweet. Author, Xiun Zhong. Chapter 10. Night. Like a deep painting. The moonlight is like water, falling quietly. The earth is covered in a soft silver white. The living room of the back house of the quadrangle. Lin Xian was wearing a set of home clothes and sitting on the sofa. The clothes on his body were bought by the sisters of the Mu family. His blood-stained clothes could not be worn. Looking at the stunning beauty in front of him who was showing off the tea art, he felt a sense of tranquility and harmony. At this time, Mu Qingtian held a small teacup with both hands and handed it to him in an elegant and charming manner. Her expression was a little excited, and even a little expectant. Like a child who took out his favorite toy to show off. Lin Xian looked at the teacup in front of him, took it, and brought it to his mouth. The bright amber color swirled in the cup, like a dancer's skirt, light and elegant. After taking a sip, Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, and his eyes gradually brightened. He admitted that he used to be a country bumpkin and had no interest in tea. Because in many people's memories, tea is hard to drink. It was not bitter, nor astringent, like taking medicine. But the black tea in front of him was different. It was mellow and sweet, sweet and refreshing, thick and refreshing, and had a unique tea fragrance. Facing Mu Qingtian's expectant eyes and expression, Lin Xian did not hesitate to praise, "It is the best tea I have ever drunk in my life." This is not licking, but the fact. Haha. Mu Qingtian laughed, her eyes were like stars, and she was as charming as peach blossoms. She looked so happy. After a day of contact, Lin Xian had some understanding of the woman in front of him. He gave an evaluation, canary. Beautiful, simple, and innocent, but she was protected in a beautiful cage all day long. She had never seen the wind and rain, and she was not very experienced in the world, living in a small, beautiful world. Lin Xian was a little puzzled. Why did Mu Qingjian, the ice beauty, let him stay with her sister? And the feeling this ice beauty gave him was exactly the opposite of Mu Qingtian. She was very smart and almost a demon, with a very high IQ. Mu Qingjian can draw inferences from every word you say. She is so smart that it is a bit scary. Such a smart woman, but she puts her stupid sister in front of a strange man. Are you really not afraid that your sister will be eaten to the bone? Could it be that she fell into the Pansy cave? Lin Xian maliciously speculated. Is it going to start? Mu Qingtian bit her lip, looking excited and nervous, staring with a pair of peach blossom eyes. Later, coming back to his senses, Lin Xian took out his mobile phone and checked the time. Okay. Mu Qingtian's body trembled with excitement. Don't be nervous. Lin Xian couldn't help laughing. Didn't you act well during the day? It's different. Mu Qingtian blinked her charming eyes. I'll have a real performance later. Yes, performance. Next they will play a pair of young lovers. Lin Xian plays the scumbag who cheats on girls. Mu Qingtian plays the silly and innocent girl who is cheated. Well, it's very similar even without acting. The script is also very simple. The two of them stayed up late at night and went to the yard to make love and talk sweetly. Coincidentally, they were discovered and monitored by the camera in the stone sculpture. The scumbag tricked the innocent girl into investing 2 billion yuan to start a company to make money. The innocent girl foolishly agreed to everything for her beloved scumbag. It's bloody, right? But often the bloody plots in movies and TV series are based on reality. The ultimate goal of the script is very simple. The scumbag who cheated 2 billion took the money to an apartment and hid it. Malicious phishing. The target is the kidnappers. At the same time, it can also divert the kidnappers' attention from the Mu sisters to him. The reason why it is 2 billion. Because Lin Xian knows that the ransom the kidnappers want to get this time is 1 billion. As long as this group of kidnappers are normal people. On the one hand, you have to take the risk of kidnapping to get 1 billion. On the other hand, you can easily get 2 billion with just a little effort. If you were a kidnapper, what would you choose? This is why Mu Qingjian said that Lin Xian's plan was crazy and bold. In order to lure out the kidnappers, this is simply playing with one's life. Playing with one's own life. Of course, if the cooperation is proper, Lin Xian is still safe. As for this cooperation, there will be a sniper and 3 guards, secretly cooperating with Lin Xian. This lineup is a bit luxurious. If you still can't win when 4 Tongtiande team up with you, go eat shit. However, do you really think that things will be so simple? No. Lin Xian fell into deep thought. In the previous life, there were 3 kidnapping cases. The ransoms for the 3 kidnapping cases were 1 billion, 3 billion, and 5 billion respectively. Many people may have overlooked the key point of a problem. The ransom is in units of 100 million, and the starting point is 1 billion. As long as they do a case, even if it is 1 billion, it is enough for this group of kidnappers to live happily for a lifetime. Why do the kidnappers continue to commit crimes? Don't say that this group of kidnappers is mentally abnormal and likes kidnapping. Lin Xian found a total of 6 kidnappers in his previous life. It is understandable that one kidnapper is mentally abnormal. Are all 6 kidnappers mentally abnormal? They have so much money, why don't they just enjoy themselves? Do they like committing crimes, fighting wits and courage with the police, and risking their lives? Suppose it is true. That can only mean one thing. The kidnappers did not kidnap for money. Thinking of this possibility, Lin Xian was horrified. 3 kidnapping cases, 3 female victims, the background seemed very scary. The most crucial point is that all 3 kidnapping cases took place in Beijing. The targets were all the Mu sisters. What does it remind you of? I didn't expect that I would start in hell mode after my rebirth. Lin Xian had a toothache. The beautiful moment after rebirth was shattered, and there was only anxiety and uneasiness in my heart. At this moment, he was alert. The shocking kidnapping case in the previous life did not seem to be a simple kidnapping case. If his reasoning is valid, it may involve something that makes anyone feel terrible. Someone is targeting some top 2nd generations. Lin Xian shook his head. Reasoning. List the clues of the previous life one by one in his mind. Start to sort out, make assumptions, and screen. Reasoning is actually doing subtraction. X equal 1. No matter how you reason, there is only one truth. Unconsciously, Lin Xian's mind entered a certain state. The brain was working frantically. Countless possibilities emerged from the mind. Then they were excluded from the mind. Time was slowly passing. Lin Xian did not notice that there were already 2 beauties sitting beside him, watching him quietly. The Mu sisters smiled at the big boy who was in a state of contemplation beside them. Until, snap. Lin Xian slapped himself and cursed, "I am stupid." His slap startled the Mu sisters, and they all rolled their eyes. What is the other party's purpose? You will know if you try. Lin Xian stood up. When facing the two beauties, he was stunned for a moment. They are too similar, and it is difficult to tell who is who for a while. But from the clothes and temperament, some differences can still be seen. Lin Xian smiled at the beauty in youthful clothes and said, "Let's start our performance." The beauty raised the corner of her mouth, stood up and walked towards the living room door with Lin Xian. And the seemingly cold beauty on the sofa suddenly curved her eyes. Like a pair of crescent moons, they become charming and seductive, smiling foolishly. "Little fool, you recognized the wrong sister."